the power of the US Navy is absolutely insane. From behemoth aircraft carriers to cutting-edge supersonic jets that launch from the middle of the ocean like angry birds, the Navy's strength is unmatched. Nothing can stand up to their naval power, not even the monstrous waves tall enough to dwarf a small mountain or submarines built as tough as steel. Stick around to discover more about this unstoppable force and the Navy's war machines that dominate everything they face in the ocean and beyond. One of the most terrifying forces in the ocean, rogue waves can tower up to 100 feet high. And the worst part? They strike without warning, swallowing everything in their path. And let's not forget tsunamis, capable of wiping out entire coastlines from over 1,000 kilometers away. But what happens when these unstoppable forces collide with something as massive as an aircraft carrier? Join me today as we find out. Aside from rogue waves and tsunamis, can these behemoths of steel and firepower hold their own when faced with something as unpredictable and destructive as a hurricane? In addition to enemy forces, these carriers also have to contend with nature itself. Hurricanes are born from the fury of the ocean, costing Mother Nature nothing but their competitor, a $13 billion aircraft carrier, one of the most expensive things to ever grace the sea. It's the ultimate battle, human engineering versus nature's raw power. And when the final result is destruction, well, you can't exactly hand Mother Nature an invoice. Hurricanes are the ultimate natural predators that are born in warm tropical waters and quietly build strength until they're ready to unleash chaos. These storms are both breathtaking and fearsome in their destructive power, with winds tearing through at over 150 miles per hour and relentless rain pouring down. Now, imagine an aircraft carrier, a floating fortress, staring down the barrel of a hurricane. It's like a scene straight out of a Michael Bay movie. Waves the size of buildings crashing into the deck, testing the limits of every tie-down chain, holding billions of dollars of aircraft and other equipment. The storm doesn't just threaten the carrier's hardware. Over 4,000 crew members' lives are at stake as the ship sways and groans under nature's assault. Can you picture it? The chaos, the sheer force of the ocean's fury. So what does this mighty vessel need in order to survive an onslaught of nature's wrath? The real hero behind saving billions of dollars and countless lives is the engineering marvel that makes these colossal aircraft carriers possible. Every inch of these giants is designed to withstand the ocean's wrath, because these aren't ordinary run-of-the-mill ships. They're built to take on the harshest conditions the ocean can throw at them, including hurricanes. A big part of what makes them so resilient is their sheer size and weight. Aircraft carriers become the real power of the sea with their enormous hulls and deep drafts. These elements make them far less vulnerable to the kind of violent rocking that smaller ships experience during storms. So when those hurricane winds start howling, you might wonder if these giants are at risk of toppling over like a toy boat being tossed by an angry toddler. But the reality is that these carriers are equipped with cutting-edge stability systems, like gyroscopic stabilizers that help them stay steady even when the wind and waves are trying to knock them off balance. And let's not forget their flight decks. These decks are designed to handle fighter jets landing at breakneck speeds while slamming into the surface with an incredible amount of force. If they can endure that kind of punishment day in and day out, it's clear that hurricane-force winds and towering waves are nothing in front of this gigantic maritime ship. Archimedes might have laid down the basics of buoyancy, but he had no idea his principles would one day keep 100,000-ton steel giants afloat. The rules are simple. If an object is less dense than the water it displaces, it floats. But aircraft carriers, they don't just float, they dominate the seas. With their sharp prows cutting through waves and flat decks stretching out like a massive battlefield, they may look unstable at first glance, but yet these flat tops are engineered to perfection, balancing sheer weight with expert design. These carriers don't just navigate, they thrive, defying the laws of nature while carrying and protecting billions of dollars of equipment on their backs. When you gaze at an aircraft carrier cruising the ocean, it's easy to miss the real ferocity happening beneath the surface. That sleek, knife-like bow might slice through the waves, but the true genius is hidden below. Take my favorite, the Nimitz-class carrier. It's not just a floating fortress, its hull spreads out a staggering 134 feet wide at the waterline. This colossal width is the ultimate stabilizer, making sure that buoyancy forces are evenly distributed and keeping the carrier rock steady. This beauty is designed to laugh in the face of nature's fury, ensuring that even the roughest seas can't topple this steel giant. Starting in the 1920s, shipyards built passenger ships with large bulb-like protrusions below the waterline. One of the most famous ships with this kind of a bow was the Imperial Japanese Navy battleship, the Yamato, the largest battleship of all time. The Yamato's bulbous bow stuck out over 10 feet, giving her an extraordinary top speed of 28 knots. U.S. Navy aircraft carriers have been built with bulbous bows since the USS Ronald Reagan. These bows are a standard of the latest Ford-class carriers, including the USS Gerald R. Ford, and will be features on the future carriers like John F. Kennedy, Enterprise, and Doris Miller. They're also standard on the Wasp and America-class amphibious assault ships and the Arleigh Burke and Zumwalt-class destroyers. They also help add a ton of stability, so it's a lot harder to knock these things off kilter. While the aircraft carrier's engineering is nothing short of extraordinary and amazing, it's the crew skill and training that really makes a difference when confronting a hurricane or angry monster waves. Now, these sailors aren't just on board for the ride. They're experts in handling extreme conditions and adapting to whatever challenges come their way. Their experience is crucial for keeping both the ship and its crew safe. When a hurricane is about to hit the aircraft carriers at its peak, the crew springs into action with a series of crucial precautions. They secure all loose equipment, lock down hatches, and reinforce key parts of the ship's structure. The command team also carefully charts a course to take the ship away from the storm's most dangerous areas. During a hurricane or a big challenge like that, the crew operates like a finely tuned machine and works in unison to ensure the ship remains afloat and operational. It's a high-stakes scenario, and it's here when their training and commitment are pushed to the limits. So, can aircraft carriers handle hurricanes or monstrous waves? The answer is a definitive yes. Despite the sheer power of hurricanes and the wrath of the waves, these naval giants are more than capable of weathering the storm. Equipped with advanced technology, robust engineering, and a highly skilled crew, they laugh in the face of danger and roar at the wrath of the ocean. These carriers aren't just any ship. They're colossal symbols of maritime dominance. The real thrill lies not only in whether they can defy extreme weather, but in how they do it with awe-inspiring engineering and sheer human grit. As they charge through treacherous waters and slam into nature's fury head-on, these giants become the ultimate testament to humanity's drive to master the raw, untamed forces of the natural world. Their unbreakable resilience is more than impressive. It's a badass declaration of our power to tackle the most monstrous challenges and emerge triumphant. Yep, these gigantic 1,000-ton aircraft carriers can take on monstrous waves, and we've seen how they hold up against tsunamis and hurricanes without breaking a sweat. But now a question is, what happens when a submarine slams into one of these colossal carriers in the middle of the ocean? Well, the result isn't exactly what you'd expect. Let's dive into some historical precedents of collisions between these two rulers of the sea. And if one of them gets destroyed, just how much does the Navy stand to lose? Becoming a fighter pilot is no easy task. It can cost up to $11 million and requires an intense amount of time and rigorous training. The jets needed for this costly and challenging training take years of hard work and millions of dollars to design, build, and perfect. While there are plenty of training jet options, some are so reliable and efficient that they're simply irreplaceable. Mastering the skies has been the ultimate key to victory on the ground. So in the early 2000s, programs like the TX emerged with one mission: prepare pilots to dominate the skies in cutting-edge jets like the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II. The result? The Boeing Saab T-7 Red Hawk, a sleek, modern trainer built to mimic today's most advanced fighter's speed, power, and precision. The Mustang may have led the way, but the Red Hawk ensures the next wave of elite pilots is ready to continue that tradition of air superiority. The Red Hawk, originally called the Boeing TX, is a subsonic advanced jet trainer that highlights a collaboration between Boeing and Saab. This American-Swedish project was chosen by the United States Air Force in September of 2018 to replace the aging Northrop T-38 Talon in its advanced jet training program. Designed with modern tech and enhanced capabilities, the Red Hawk represents the next step in pilot training for the USAF, preparing future generations of fighter pilots for sustained excellence. The USAF's search for a replacement for the supersonic Northrop T-38 Talon began as early as 2003, with plans to have the new jet trainer in service by 2020. However, after a tragic fatigue failure of the T-38C in 2008, which claimed the lives of its two-person crew, the Air Force advanced the timeline to achieve initial operating capability by 2017. Despite this urgency, shrinking budgets and competing priorities delayed the program further, pushing the IOC to fiscal year 2023 or 2024. Although the TX program was temporarily left out of the fiscal year 2014 budget, it remained a priority for the USAF. In response, Boeing partnered with Swedish aerospace firm Saab to compete for the contract. On September 13, 2016, the Boeing Saab team revealed prototypes of the Boeing TX, a single-engine advanced jet trainer featuring a twin-tail, tandem seating, and a retractable tricycle landing gear. It's powered by a German electric F404 afterburning turbofan engine. The first flight of the TX took place on December 20, 2016, and the Boeing Saab team submitted their bid later that month, when the Air Force officially opened the T-7 program for submissions. The Red Hawk isn't just a new aircraft, it's the future of fighter pilot training for the United States Air Force. Designed to be as adaptable as it is advanced, this all-around advanced pilot training system, or APS, is built to evolve with changing technologies, mission types, and training demands. But what sets the T-7 apart? It was originally designed, built, and tested to be cutting-edge yet low-risk. It blends live, virtual, and simulated training to create a fifth-generation aircrew system that's light years ahead of anything else the other guys have got. This system doesn't just refresh pilot training, it revolutionizes it, delivering a leap in capability that'll shape the next generation of American fighter pilots. The APS system is at the heart of this transformation, complete with next-level ground-based training, the most advanced visual displays ever seen in simulators, and integrated live virtual constructive training. It's more than ready to replace the F-16 as the go-to training tool, ensuring tomorrow's pilots can master the skies with the same level of precision and dominance that the Red Hawk promises. Wouldn't mind having one of those simulators in my living room. Before the T-7 Red Hawk took center stage, the T-38 Talon reigned supreme as the United States Air Force's primary jet trainer. Introduced way back in the 60s, the Talon made history as the world's first supersonic jet trainer, a feat that earned it a legendary status, which it still holds today. For decades, it trained generations of fighter pilots and even served NASA in astronaut training. Despite being slated for replacement by the T-7, the Talon's legacy refuses to fade, thanks to numerous upgrades that have kept it in the game. While the Red Hawk is gearing up to take the lead, the Talon remains a steadfast workhorse in the U.S. Air Force's arsenal. Back in the 60s, this was no ordinary jet. It was the world's first supersonic trainer, a pioneer that continues to shape fighter and bomber pilots to this day. Its twin General Electric J85 engines still push it to Mach 1.3, a speed that rivals some of today's fighters. It hasn't just trained elite Air Force pilots either. No, NASA's been using the Talon for astronaut training for a while. Not to mention there's a lot of test pilots and reconnaissance crews that also earned their wings on the Talon. But training the world's most formidable pilots requires more than just one approach. The U.S. Air Force has invested in countless methods and technologies over the years to ensure that pilots can conquer any challenge. In the early 2000s, the government launched Pilot Training Next, or PTN, an ambitious initiative designed to push pilot training into the future. Harnessing the latest tech and cutting-edge methods, PTN accelerated the way pilots are trained, using not only aircraft like the T-38, but also advanced simulators capable of replicating a wide variety of jets. Boeing reached a major milestone in February with the development of a groundbreaking flight control law for the T-7A, and since then the aircraft has already taken to the skies more than 10 times, pushing the envelope with a 25-degree angle of attack. What really sets these flights apart is that 3 of them showcase the T-7A's precision tracking at high angles of attack, a critical skill for pilot training. With the integration of Control Law 17.5, the stage is set for the U.S. Air Force to begin high angle of attack and departure resistance training at Edwards Air Force Base. According to the vice president of the program, the Red Hawk is ready to transform the way we train our pilots, bringing a new level of safety, performance, and adaptability. Completing these 3 key milestones marks serious progress in the program's evolution. Boeing is pressing forward with flight testing and will continue escape system testing through 2025. As the T-7A advances through testing and achieves more flight completions, Boeing's preparing to shift into low-rate initial production, or LRIP. A new production line is being built, and by mid-year, Boeing will begin loading the first forward and aft fuselages for LRIP, with suppliers already hard at work developing the parts needed for full-scale production. As with any aircraft, the old-fashioned T-38 demands meticulous maintenance to perform at peak levels, especially since many of these jets are now between 50 and 70 years old. Despite its age, the Talon has undergone numerous upgrades, including avionics enhancements, structural improvements, and engine overhauls, with the later models being dubbed T-38Cs. A propulsion modernization program has also boosted its engine reliability and takeoff power, keeping this veteran flying strong until its eventual replacement by the Red Hawk when it's ready to go. The Talon's history even includes a stint with the Air Force Thunderbirds, serving as the iconic team's aircraft from 1974 to 1982. These aerial acrobats showcase the T-38's precision and agility in front of millions, proving that even a training jet could deliver a jaw-dropping performance. The switch to the T-38 wasn't only a demonstration of skill, but also a cost-effective move during an era of fuel constraints. But beyond standard training, some pilots face specialized challenges, like the heart-pounding experience of taking off and landing on an aircraft carrier. This high-stakes skill is where the McDonnell Douglas T-45 Goshawk comes in. Developed in the late 80s, the Goshawk is the U.S. Navy's go-to trainer for preparing pilots to handle carrier-based operations. With features tailored for the Navy's demanding environments, such as catapult launches and arresting wire recoveries, the Goshawk ensures the pilots are ready for the real thing. Now just imagine the future of supersonic jets in the Red Hawk as they begin to reign the sky like real kings. Jets like the Red Hawk are going beyond just being stepping stones. They're the backbone of elite military training, ensuring pilots are prepared to tackle the challenges of modern warfare. As new technologies invented, these aircraft continue to evolve, helping pilots master the skies with skill, confidence, and precision. These aircraft carriers, which even a Russian submarine and its sneaky captains can't outmatch, are deployed all over the world. Each carrier costs a whopping $8 billion, and the United States has strategically placed 11 of them in key locations worldwide. But what's the significance of dropping nearly $100 billion on these massive vessels? Well, let's check out why this investment is so critical. The broad interests of the U.S. extend beyond its own borders, and one of the most important fronts where it needs to be the strongest and fearsome is in security. Like the British Royal Navy more than a century before it, the U.S. Navy has a command of the sea that affords the United States unrivaled international influence. But the purpose of these aircraft carriers extends beyond security, because the real reason that they seem to be everywhere will surprise you. In warfare, firepower reigns supreme. And when it comes to delivering that firepower, nothing compares to an aircraft carrier. Think of the Gerald R. Ford and Nimitz-class carriers as the apex predators of the battlefront. These giants can unleash up to 125 strike sorties per day during peak operations, each capable of engaging multiple high-value targets. No other platform, whether it's air-based, land-based, or even another sea vessel, comes remotely close to the raw firepower these behemoths bring to the table. But here's where it gets even more jaw-dropping. These carriers are practically self-sufficient war machines. With their at-sea reload capabilities and massive storage of munitions, they can keep the pressure on for extended periods without needing to return to base. Whether it's launching devastating airstrikes, securing air superiority, or hunting down submarines, the aircraft carrier is a relentless force that can change the tides of battle in an instant. What makes them even more terrifying? They're mobile. Aircraft carriers aren't stuck in one spot like air bases, making them an incredibly tough target to hit. They can slip into international waters, ready to strike without any permission from a host nation. Moving across the world's oceans, these floating fortresses are nearly untouchable, striking fear into any adversary while remaining just out of reach. To understand the true power of an aircraft carrier, you need to see it for what it really is. 100,000 tons of raw power and pure naval supremacy. This isn't just a floating airfield, it's an evolving weapon, a juggernaut of modern military strategy that's been adapting since its creation in the early 20th century. And now, as China's vast A2AD or anti-access area of denial defensive network rises, these carriers are forced to sharpen their edge even further. But let's be real, China's network sounds like a knockoff robot from Star Wars, doesn't it? These colossal vessels have taken on 6 pivotal roles over time, each one crafted from the ever-changing landscape of warfare. First up, the role of being the eyes of the fleet. In their earliest days, and especially during World War II, carriers lurked behind battle lines, launching aircraft to scout out enemy positions. They were the unseen watchers in the night, gathering intelligence that would determine the fate of entire fleets. Then came the role of cavalry. Much like the fast-moving cavalry of the 19th century, these carriers would strike swiftly, disrupt enemy operations, and then vanish before they could be caught. Hit, run, and disappear. Their mobility became their greatest weapon, an ability to stay hidden until it was too late for the enemy. Next, they evolved into the capital ship. In this role, carriers became the centerpiece of naval warfare, engaging in calculated, decisive battles. But here's the catch. They fought only when they knew the risk of destruction was outweighed by the damage they could inflict. They were tactical, they were calculating, and they were lethal. As the Cold War raged, carriers transformed again, this time into nuclear strike platforms. With Washington worried that B-36 bombers might not be up to the task, carriers were outfitted to deliver nuclear payloads deep into enemy territory. The stakes were raised, and the world learned that these carriers were no longer just conventional tools. They had the power to obliterate nations. But it's not just about firepower. Enter the geopolitical chess piece role. For decades, U.S. presidents have sent these carriers as symbols of American strength. Moving them into position was like playing a high-stakes game of chess, each deployment signaling American resolve. When the USS Gerald R. Ford recently sailed into the eastern Mediterranean, it wasn't just about preparing for battle. It was a message to the world. The U.S. is watching, and it's ready to act. Finally, the role that's perhaps the most well-known, airfield at sea. Since the Cold War, carriers have launched aircraft to support operations ashore, acting as mobile air bases. But now, as sea-controlled threats like China's Naval Forces increase, this role becomes more dangerous. Operating in contested waters will push these carriers into a new phase of risk, where mobility could be the difference between domination and destruction. When it comes to global crises, aircraft carriers aren't just symbols of military might, they're lifelines in times of catastrophe. While amphibious-ready groups often get the first call for disaster relief, carriers possess something invaluable: speed and raw capacity. These floating giants are game changers in humanitarian assistance and disaster response. Now imagine a carrier's fleet of aircraft sweeping across disaster zones, conducting search and rescue missions, delivering life-saving medical care, and ferrying supplies to those stranded. That's what happened in 2004 when a massive earthquake and tsunami tore through Indonesia and the Indian Ocean. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group was the first on the scene, providing relief in one of the largest humanitarian efforts the Navy has ever undertaken. And then, in 2011, disaster struck Japan. After the earthquake and subsequent tsunami wreaked havoc on the Fukushima nuclear plant, the USS Ronald Reagan served as a floating base, helping deliver critical supplies and fueling rescue helicopters for weeks. These are just a few examples of the unmatched versatility aircraft carriers bring to the table. Now let's switch gears. In a world that's becoming increasingly chaotic and unpredictable, the U.S. Navy's readiness is more critical than ever. This year's Hook Symposium theme, Be Ready, couldn't be more on point. We're no longer living in the peaceful post-Cold War era that some predicted. Instead, we face a landscape where nations like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and violent extremists pose constant threats. This is a world that looks a lot more like Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations, not the utopia that Francis Fukuyama imagined in the end of history. Decades ago, in 1954, Huntington warned that the Navy's mission wasn't just about controlling the seas anymore. It was about projecting power on land, particularly along the critical littorals of the Eurasian continent. His words still resonate today, more than 70 years later. Naval aviation and aircraft carriers are more indispensable than ever before. The reason is simple. U.S. adversaries fear them. And because of that fear, they're working overtime to target and neutralize our carriers. But if they think we're going to quit or slow down, well, they're in for a rude awakening. 'Cause America never quits. After all, we're not the French. The challenges are clear. To keep up with an ever-evolving world, we've got to build an impenetrable counter-targeting capability. We need to dazzle, deceive, and destroy any enemy who dares to locate or threaten our carriers. The carrier's main battery, the air wing and its deadly payload, needs to be faster, smarter, and deadlier, with increased range and precision that'll leave adversaries scrambling. And let's not forget about the future. Unmanned systems, directed energy weapons, and even battlefield 3D printing are already on the horizon. The inherent space and power of a CVN make it the perfect platform for the military tech of tomorrow. The US has the talent, the drive, and the sheer willpower to meet these challenges head on. And the race against time, every second counts. Speed Angels, the fight's on. Beyond these super advanced aircraft carriers, the US Navy, in collaboration with the Air Force, is constantly pushing the envelope of what matters for dominance in both the ocean and the seas. They've already begun testing cutting-edge Boeing supersonic jets, designed to sharpen pilot skills and break their limits. But how crucial is the testing of these jets? And is pouring billions of dollars into their design really worth it? Let's find out. The average cost of an aircraft carrier is around $4 to $9 billion, while a submarine comes in at about $3 to $5 billion. One dominates the surface of the ocean, and the other rules the deep and dark waters below. An aircraft carrier weighs in at a staggering 100,000 tons, more than double the weight of most submarines. But when these two giants of the sea go head-to-head, who comes out on top? Stick around and we'll break it down. Now here's some historic precedents, and the results are pretty horrific. Imagine a $100 million submarine taking on a $4.5 billion nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in a naval war game. Sounds kind of like a one-sided fight, doesn't it? Here's the scoop. In 2005, the Swedish submarine HMS Gotland did the unthinkable. It sank the USS Ronald Reagan. Yeah, the small diesel-electric sub managed to sneak past all the layers of the carrier's defense, including destroyers and helicopters, and scored direct simulated torpedo hits. I haven't seen somebody punching above their weight class that much since I started dating my wife. The incident happened when the US Navy launched a massive anti-submarine warfare exercise off the West Coast. they decided that they were going to throw a wild card into the mix, the small Swedish submarine, the Gotland. The mighty USS Ronald Reagan and its battle group were also the target of the Swedish sub. Well, what happened next shocked everybody, except for maybe the Gotland's crew. They knew exactly what was going on. This shrewd little diesel sub managed to slice through the layers of anti-submarine defenses that included helicopters and destroyers specifically hunting it down. But the few simulated torpedo hits, the Gotland proved that it could have easily sunk the Reagan or left it crippled if it had been the real deal. So, if we compare that cost again, while the USS Ronald Reagan comes with a staggering price tag of $4.5 million, not even counting the rest of the battle group, the Gotland cost a mere $100 million. Diesel submarines might typically be noisier and have shorter underwater endurance than their nuclear counterparts, but the Gotland was different. You see, this sub used Stirling engines, a technology from the early 1800s that allowed it to run almost silently. So this thing was nearly impossible for enemy sonar to detect, even when going up against an aircraft carrier. Now, this also didn't happen in normal circumstances, so the tension was rising and near-peer competition with China and the Indo-Pacific was also cutthroat. So the HSMS provided a wake-up call for the United States Navy. So how did a relatively cheap sub pull off this shocking upset against one of the most advanced war machines on the freaking planet? Okay, so the short answer is that the Gotland wasn't just an ordinary submarine. As mentioned before, it ran on the Stirling engine, which made it incredibly silent and incredibly difficult to detect. Well, let's just say the American Navy woke up because it uncovered some major weaknesses in their carrier defenses, especially against quiet subs like the Gotland. The US Navy took this call seriously and leased the Gotland to investigate how it slipped past their defenses in order to improve their anti-submarine tactics. But this wouldn't be the first time vessels of this size slammed into each other. Flashback, March 21st, 1984, also the day when the ocean turned into a stage for a high-stakes thriller. An unexpected shadow sneaked into the scene as the US Navy worked on its skills and stamina alongside the South Korean Navy. The Soviet Navy's Victor-class nuclear attack submarine, the K-314 Petropavlovsk, was secretly chasing the mighty USS Kitty Hawk. This situation turns a routine exercise into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Imagine the tension in Kitty Hawk as her crew was aware of the upcoming threat. They were ready for anything, except for what was about to happen next. Reports say that the K-314 was cruising without its navigation lights, which was strictly unlawful in the sea. And naval warfare, that's like playing poker without showing your cards. The move was reckless and absolutely disastrous. But the cost of this decision was even higher because of the bad weather conditions, and the Soviet submarine lost track of the USS Kitty Hawk. The captain made a bold yet really risky call to dive to just 10 meters, a move that could have disastrous results. Looking through the periscope, the commander realized a chilling truth, that the USS Kitty Hawk and its strike group were only 4 to 5 kilometers away. The scary thing is that both vessels were charging straight toward each other at full throttle, which terrified the teams of both sea giants. With heart racing, the submarine's commander ordered an immediate dive, but it was too late, and the impact was inevitable. The submarine took the brunt of the damage. The initial jolt was terrifying as the team was slammed around. Then it was time to assess the damage. The submarine's conning tower was intact, and miraculously, there were no leaks. But then came a second, more powerful strike. The USS Kitty Hawk had rammed into them again, this time hitting the propeller. That impact had damaged some critical components, making the crew of that submarine realize that they were in danger. Forced to surface, the sub had no choice but to show itself to the enemy. Meanwhile, aircraft from the USS Kitty Hawk took a mandatory flight, ready to assess the damage from above. On the bridge of the Kitty Hawk, Captain David Rogers had felt the impact. The moment was well worth watching when he ordered 2 helicopters to launch and assist the damaged submarine. However, the reports confirmed that the Soviets didn't accept the offer and declared the sub was intact. What could have been a full-blown maritime disaster turned into a near miss, proving that even odds can be defied. However, this close call sent both navies on high alert, serving as a stark reminder that in the depths of the ocean, danger is always one step away. But what more could anybody expect from the former Soviet Navy, am I right? Speaking of, this was Vladimir Evsinko's fault. He was the captain of the K-314. According to David Hornbuckle, a former U.S. Navy submariner and nuclear power plant mechanical operator, it's shocking how the K-314 sonar crew failed to detect the massive 82,000-ton aircraft carrier approaching them. Unless there was some kind of electrical failure with their sonar, missing something that huge defies logic. But we know how much the Soviets loved their vodka back in the day. Hornbuckle explains that the fault ultimately rests with the submarine for surfacing directly in front of an oncoming aircraft carrier. But how the heck could something like that occur? Soviet submarine commanders were known for being more careless and reckless compared to their American counterparts, so it's possible that the submarine's captain was attempting a risky maneuver. During the Cold War, a Soviet captain might have wanted to surface a sub in the middle of an American carrier group as a way to demonstrate Soviet superiority in both technology and seamanship. At the end of the day, the Soviets, instead of achieving a propaganda victory by showing off their maritime skills, the whole incident turned into a major embarrassment for the Soviet captain. It also remains a mystery how the hell on earth the Soviet sonar failed to detect the USS Kitty Hawk of nearly 100 tons. A lot of people are left wondering what really happened that night. And while we may not have the complete picture, there are some reflections from a former submariner. Several Americans blamed the Soviet submarine captain for the incident, and the Soviet Naval Command concurred. Poor old Vladimir was suspended from the post of captain and continued his service on land. Not only are incidents like this incredibly expensive in terms of repairing damage, but it also comes with the high risk of inciting a war or a conflict. But regardless, at the end of the day, I really hope that Russian commander picked up his phone when people were calling about the extended warranty on a sub. This highly advanced level of naval and aerial power is absolutely vital for the United States. The Navy has pulled off something truly incredible, spending an insane amount of money to achieve it in the process. With the country bordered by the world's largest oceans and facing threats from abroad, from countries like Russia, China, and North Korea, strategic deployment of aircraft carriers and continuous technological advancements are making the U.S. Navy's power virtually unbeatable. At this rate, nothing's going to be able to challenge them in the open seas. So make sure you drop a comment below and let us know what you think about these mesmerizing and insanely powerful naval machines out at sea. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for even more jaw-dropping videos about what's happening with the world's forces and the oceans. See you next time.